Resilient by Valerie Bell. Read by Rose Malik. Chapter 9. The Science of Resilience. It's good news. Why did you leave? Recently, someone gave me, Valerie, a picture that touched me. A dark-haired, muscular young teenager dressed in Awana Games gear smiles out at me. Looks like the picture is circa 1960-something. No one knew it at the time this picture was taken, but in a few years, that young boy would become a world-famous comedian, one of the original 7 cast members of Saturday Night Live. We were introduced to his raucous humor in Animal House and the cult classic The Blues Brothers. That teenager, smiling out from the picture, was John Belushi. He was also a member of my high school graduation class. Strangely, for all these years, I never knew that he had an Awana connection until that picture was given to me. Where was I? It makes me incredibly sad to think how close he came to belonging, believing, and becoming, knowing and loving Jesus for the rest of his life. Instead, tragically, he died in his early 30s of a drug overdose. It could have been so different than it ended up being. What a great loss. What a great heartbreak. John, why did you leave? What happened to you? Who hasn't asked that question over someone? Why did you leave? However, if we turn that question around and ask people who had every reason to leave, why did you stay? We might understand what contributes to spiritual resilience in people. Why did you stay? Dr. Wes Stafford is the President Emeritus of Compassion International. As a child, he was raised in Côte d'Ivoire, where his parents served as missionaries. He was enrolled in a boarding school for missionary kids he calls Bandulo Christian Academy. For 9 months, the children attending Bandulo were separated from their parents and families. What no one knew was that Bandulo was a place of rigid control and fearsome consequences. Beatings, abuse of the most humiliating kind, and constant terror were daily life for these vulnerable missionary kids. Life at Bandulo was horrendous. For a child, it was nearly hellacious. Wes experienced all of that as a boy. So why did Wes Stafford stay? Why, in light of his suffering, didn't he just chuck his faith? He had every reason to reject Christianity and leave. Many of the children of Bandulo did give up on God. In Wes's words, they fell down and never got up. Instead, Wes became one of the world's most impassioned Christian advocates for children. These are his words. I've heard it said, it is the children the world almost destroys who rise up to save it. I am one of the little ones who was almost destroyed. Many of my childhood friends who suffered the evil of abuse with me fell down in the middle of that nightmare and never got up. After people read my story of experiencing abuse as a child in Too Small to Ignore, I am often asked, how did you get back up? Why didn't you give up on God and your faith? What made you dedicate your life to Him and to saving children who suffer poverty, abuse, and hopelessness? All I can say is I am simply a product of God's grace. As damaged as I was, I am humbled that God chose to use me. Believe me, if He can still use me, He can redeem and use anyone. Looking back, I now realize that, as a boy, I chose my belonging. I determined that I belonged not with that cruel and sadistic boarding school, but rather within the bosom of a loving African village and nestled within a caring family. My believing was also a choice. I chose to reject the beliefs of my oppressors. Their faith, lived out in cruelty to us children, did not match what I understood and believed to be true, that our Heavenly Father loved us little children and welcomed us into His arms and into His kingdom. My becoming was not understood by me as a child, but my hurt and sorrow shaped my heart and directed my path toward a lifelong battle against poverty in my African village and abuse in my boarding school. The very anger and pain fueled my passion to fight back with the rest of my life. I am so grateful God led me to Compassion International, a very powerful tool in my calling and mission. People tell me they are in awe of that resilience. How could I forgive, pick myself up, and enter a lifelong fight on behalf of other hurting children? Looking back, I can trace his orchestrations along my path, and above all, I see his amazing grace. I belong to him. I believe in him. I strive to live my life becoming more like him. What is redemption if not rescued souls, belonging, believing, and becoming? Resilience. Sometimes it is forged in a child's life while he or she is suffering some of life's cruelest challenges. But God has mercy on us and responds to our suffering. At the very point where we are broken, abused, and humiliated, God makes us strong. God converted the anger and pain of Wes Stafford's childhood into a passion to fight for children who can't fight for themselves. That's resilience. The science of resilience. Why kids get back up. Why is it that some kids experience adverse conditions, yet they get back up? Child discipleship can play a significant role in this process of getting back up. Child discipleship is built on belonging, believing, and becoming develops resilience in kids. While researching for this book, specifically while studying the science of resilience in children, I, Matt, posted a comment on social media pertaining to resilient kids. I promptly received a direct message from a friend, you know who you are, who shared, "Kids are not resilient." Thanks to the plethora of research available on the science of resilience, I was able to kindly reply, "That's not what the science says." You may be surprised or even frightened by all that pops up when you Google the phrase, "the science of," but if you scroll down far enough, you will come across the science of resilience. This area of study has been of increasing interest in recent years. Why? In short, it's a seismic need. Marketplace employers, educators, physicians, therapists, researchers, coaches and parents, and others have observed a significant need for resilience to be developed in young people. It is important to learn not simply to cope with life's adversities, but to learn to thrive into adulthood. Curious? We have been too. This science comes with good news. Resilience can be developed. It can be developed in adults, and it can be developed in children. But what is resilience according to the experts? The American Psychological Association defines resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, and threat. These negative experiences in children are often referred to as adverse childhood experiences, or ACE. As we think about the future of the church, one that may be increasingly marginalized by secular culture, this science, while we can learn and apply to children in adverse conditions, should be of significant interest as we prepare today's kids to live, lead, and thrive in a very different future. So how can we help them develop resilience? In Resilience, The Science of Mastering Life's Greatest Challenges, authors Stephen M. Southwick and Dennis S. Chardonnay interviewed Vietnam POWs and other remarkably resilient people, looking for common characteristics they shared. They interviewed people such as Jerry White, who lost his leg in a landmine while hiking as a college student and struggled afterwards with depression. In the following years, he founded Landmine Survivors Network, which was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997. Jerry not only survived, he thrived and excelled. That's resilience. They interviewed others, such as Elizabeth Ebao, who was kidnapped, raped, and thrown over a bridge into a freezing river to die. She survived and lived to build a thriving clinical social work practice that focuses on helping survivors of trauma and tragedy. Elizabeth not only survived, she thrived and excelled. That's resilience. During their interviews with the resilient people, they noticed shared factors that contributed to resilience. These are the 10 emerging resilience factors they found throughout their interview process: fostering optimism, facing fear, solidifying a moral compass, practicing religion and spirituality, attracting and giving social support, imitating resilient role models, physical training, mental and emotional training, enhancing cognitive and emotional flexibility, and finally, finding meaning, purpose, and growth. As our team reflected on this list, we observed that many of these items are relational in nature. Just look at how some of the items in this list above would be applied and implemented in the life of a child. A moral compass is formed by a worldview shared through a community. Spirituality and religion are formed by faith communities and key individuals. Social support comes from people. Role models are often coaches, mentors, family members, and members of our community. Training frequently transects from person to person. A clear theme here. Resilience is formed by a combination of the internal makeup of an individual in collision with external adverse experiences. Catalyst, however, to the development of resilience is oftentimes an additional person who extends belonging and relationship for one facing adversity. An article titled, In Brief, The Science of Resilience, the Center on the Developing Child of Harvard University says that resilience requires supportive relationships and opportunities for skill building. No matter the source of hardship, the single most common factor for children who end up doing well is having the support of at least one stable and committed relationship with a parent, caregiver, or other adult. These relationships are the active ingredient in building resilience. They provide the personalized responsiveness, scaffolding, and protection that can buffer children from developmental disruption. One of the first psychologists to study resilience, Emily Warner, followed the lives of children raised in impoverished homes by alcoholic, abusive, or mentally ill parents. Warner observed that resilient children, the ones who grew up to be emotionally healthy adults, found at least one person who truly supported them and served as an admired role model. So, what is this reoccurring theme? It's a fire carrier. It's the presence of a loving, caring adult. But there was a church. This is the power of belonging. The Kidman soil that prioritizes the essential component of belonging is a garden where believing and becoming can grow, flourish, and thrive. Today's kids, now more than ever, need a community of belonging to help them develop the type of navigational resilience required to thrive in their faith in an uncertain future. As advocates for the gospel and child disciple makers, what we want more than anything is for our kids to be there in the kingdom of heaven. I sometimes envision looking across the vast multitude of God's people worshiping King Jesus in heaven, catching the joy and adoration on the faces of my two sons. What more could we want? Until then, I pray for our kids who are facing a unique future. Until then, we can learn from the science of resilience and build a church community that extends the love of Jesus to today's kids like never before. Let's inspire and equip our volunteer teams with this critical information. Through walking in relationship with you and your volunteer team, kids can navigate truly unique times as you lead them to believe in the gospel of Christ, become more like Jesus in a world in need of his hope and salvation. All but normal. We shared John Thornton's story earlier of growing up in a home where his mother suffered from traumatic brain injury, TBI. His childhood was chaotic, unpredictable, and emotionally explosive. Like Wes Stafford, Sean Thornton is also resilient. We asked Sean, senior pastor at well-known Calvary Community Church in Westlake Village, California, why did you stay? Why did you stick with your faith after such a difficult childhood? These are his words. After some of my longest and dearest friends read my memoir, All But Normal, Life on Victory Road, they asked me a simple question. So why didn't you or your brother walk away from the church or even your faith? I get it. If things seemed so difficult and challenging during my formative years, why, when I grew up, did I not simply run as far as possible from anything resembling Christianity? There are three things I have identified over the last couple of years that provided the right atmosphere and oxygen for me when life circumstances were suffocating my childhood. These three were critical to my belonging, believing, and becoming. First, what I saw in terms of my parents' hearts over time impacted my view of true Christian faith. In their brokenness, my parents both pursued knowing, loving, and serving Jesus. While there were many adverse events, hurtful words, and deeply discouraging moments that were a part of our home, my brother and I witnessed a clear trajectory of growth and faith, and a genuine desire to be used by God to help others. Looking back at my years growing up, I realized that my brother and I, even as kids, Focused less on all of the negative things that happened and more on the journey, the trajectory of seeing our parents' lives. They were honest in the struggle and honest in their seeking God more. That made an impact. The second major factor that encouraged me to hold on to my faith was the genuineness of our local church fellowship. Branch Bible Church in Mishawaka, Indiana, never had an attendance higher than 350 people. Most of my years growing up there, the church averaged about 200 people on Sundays. Like what I had seen in the heart of my parents, God allowed me to look beyond the flaws and failures of the people of Twin Branch Bible Church and see a caring family that eagerly included me. Most of the folks in our church knew little or nothing about my mother's disturbing and disruptive outbursts or behavior. That did not matter. They were themselves. They were sincere and faithful in their love for me. The people of Twin Branch created an imperfect but healthy family environment in which I always felt known, loved, and valued. The dear folks within our church let me be me. They even allowed me to experiment in serving the Lord without any fear that they would sideline or condemn me. Whether it was Sunday school, Awana, youth group, or some other ministry, caring and kind adults spoke into my life in Jesus' name. They embraced me without judgment of my family or me. Besides the trajectory of my parents' lives and the incredible local church environment in which I was raised, there was a third factor that kept me from walking away from Christianity. It's how God Himself met me in some of the darkest moments of my life in our home. While I never heard a voice, had a dream with Jesus in it, or saw an angel covered in heavenly glow, I know God met me. There were distinct moments when God filled my aching heart with His healing and peace. He reassured my mind that I was indeed His, and He would walk with me through the deepest challenges in my life. Over the years, I have struggled to describe adequately how God met me when I was a scared little boy, a middle school kid who couldn't stop crying, or a high school student who felt like he didn't belong anywhere. Belonging, believing, and becoming, for me, all rest on the trajectory of my parents' hearts, the environment of a loving local church, and God meeting me in moments of deep personal pain. I guess it seems an odd thing to say that all the craziness of my childhood, I'd never considered walking away from my faith, Christianity, or the ministry. God blessed me with a childhood I would not have chosen for myself. He did that so I, as a pastor, would understand how hard it is for people to feel like they belong, to believe God and what He says, and to become what God has called them to be, like Jesus. Foundation for Resilience. Belong, believe, and become were the foundation for spiritual resilience in both Sean Thornton's and Wes Stafford's lives. Within the nurturing communities of faith, exposed to the sometimes messy faiths of others, they developed a spiritual resilience that not only helped them to survive, but gave them incredible strength to excel and thrive in Christ. Resilience can be developed, and you and your team can disciple children and students to engage the culture and lead the church. The opportunity we have to welcome today's kids, who face a variety of adverse conditions, to belong in a relationship to us as child and youth disciple makers is remarkable. As their eyes gaze across the horizon of the broken world around them, may they be captivated by radiance of the church. May they gasp at her remarkable beauty and say, "I've found my people." In the next chapter, we are going to explore in greater detail the power of belong, believe, and become found in the resilient child discipleship philosophy. We will define some terms, share some stories, unpack the biblical basis, and dig into some research. Let's go. Essential questions. Have you asked the young adults who've left your church, why did you leave? For those who stayed, have you asked them, why did you stay? What can your team learn from the science of resilience? How can you apply what you are learning to help the volunteers and kids in your ministry? What if we equipped our local church volunteers with the science of resilience information? Can you see this information inspiring your volunteers to greater levels of empathy and engagement with the kids at your children's ministry? Think about these things.